The moment the cameras caught Yandy lowering her eyes, her voice trembling as she admitted something no one expected, fans knew they were witnessing history. This wasn't just another petty argument about social media posts or who followed who. This was a confession that shook the entire love and hip-hop community. For the first time on camera, Yandy admitted that she had formed an emotional bond with someone outside her marriage. The room froze instantly. Gasps echoed, jaws dropped, and the tension grew so heavy it felt like time had stopped. Mendeecees sat back in his chair, his face unreadable at first. Then he leaned forward and said words that cut deeper than any insult, worse than cheating. Those words sent shivers across the room. They revealed not only his pain, but the gravity of what Yandy had confessed. Emotional affairs are often invisible, but in that moment, every unspoken truth became undeniable. The family was divided. Friends whispered, and fans online erupted in disbelief. Could their marriage survive a wound this deep? The energy in the room was unlike anything the cast had ever seen. They had watched countless arguments over money, loyalty, and social media feuds, but this was different. This was raw, personal, and carried the weight of betrayal that words alone could never soften. When Yandy admitted to the emotional connection, it wasn't the kind of scandal that could be brushed off as a storyline. It hit like a thunderclap, shaking the very foundation of her relationship with Mendeecees, a relationship fans had seen endure prison time, public scrutiny, and endless rumors. The silence that followed her confession was almost unbearable. Everyone turned toward Mendeecees, waiting for his response. He leaned back slowly, his face tightening, his hands clasped as though holding back from exploding. Then he repeated, his words, calm but final, worse than cheating. It wasn't shouted in anger, it was said with a steady finality that made it all the more painful. To him, physical cheating was one thing, but giving your heart to another man, that was unforgivable. Yandy tried to explain, her voice cracking. She said it had never been physical, that she had never crossed that line. But her words offered little comfort. Mendeecees shook his head, muttering that marriage wasn't just about what happens in bed, it was about loyalty, respect, and putting your partner first. The cast began whispering in shock. One person gasped that they couldn't believe Yandy admitted it on camera, while another said they respected her honesty but feared the fallout. Even the producers exchanged nervous glances, already knowing this would dominate headlines. When Mendeecees asked how long the bond had been going on, the air grew heavier. Yandy hesitated, biting her lip, her hands twisting nervously. She explained it happened during a time when they weren't connecting, when arguments piled up and distance grew between them. She said it started with conversations, someone simply listening when she felt unheard. But her reasoning only enraged Mendeecees further, slamming his hand on the table in frustration. He told her she should have come to him, that if she felt ignored, she should have spoken louder, not turned to someone else. His voice broke as he reminded her how he had always put her first even when the world doubted him, even when he was locked away fighting for their family. The cast sat stunned, torn between sympathy for Yandy and loyalty to Mendeecees. Some quietly argued that emotional affairs can happen when someone feels neglected, while others whispered that there was no excuse, that love should be stronger than temptation. Tears filled Yandy's eyes as she reached for her husband's hand, but he pulled away. The rejection broke her. She pleaded that she had never stopped loving him, that the connection outside their marriage was never stronger than her love for him. But his eyes had grown cold, showing a side of him fans had never seen before. The tension thickened. Friends urged calm, but others demanded the full truth. One person insisted that if Yandy admitted this much, she might be hiding more. Then Mendeecees asked the sharpest question of the night. Had she ever thought about leaving him for this other man? Yandy shook her head quickly. No, never, she whispered, saying it was just an escape during a rough time. But her denial didn't erase the pain etched across his face. He pressed further. Did she still think about the man? Did she still have feelings? Her hesitation before answering was just long enough to send chills across the room. Finally, she whispered that it was over, that she had moved on, and that she was committed to fixing their marriage. Her tears poured freely, but Mendeecees stayed frozen, staring straight ahead. Lost in thought, the cast tried to mediate, some urging forgiveness, others warning that respect, once broken, is nearly impossible to repair. Online, fans mirrored this divide. Some called Yandy's honesty brave, others called it reckless. Through it all, her sobs grew louder. She begged him to understand it wasn't about love, it was about filling a void. She said she chose him, stayed with him, and built a life with him and their children. but her pleas seemed to bounce off his wall of silence. Finally, Mendeecees spoke. Calm, but chilling. Love without respect means nothing. And respect is what you threw away. His words left the room shaken. Everyone knew this was more than an argument. It was a wound that could define the rest of their marriage. The room was still buzzing with shock after Mendeecees' words sank in. It wasn't just that he felt betrayed, it was that he said it out loud, in front of everyone, stripping away the thin veil of privacy they still had left. Worse than cheating. The phrase echoed like thunder, replaying in the air, rippling through the cast and the fans who would soon see it unfold. Yandy wiped her tears, her voice shaking as she tried to explain. She insisted the bond she had outside her marriage was never real, that it was born out of loneliness during a time when her marriage felt heavy with distance and arguments. She repeated that Mendeecees had always been her one true love, but the more she defended herself, the more doubtful and defensive she sounded. That defensiveness made the room question her even more. Mendeecees sat in silence, his breathing heavy, his eyes locked on her without blinking. When he finally spoke, his tone was sharp enough to pierce her words. "If I was your one true love," he asked quietly, "why wasn't I enough?" The question landed like a dagger. Yandy froze, her tears spilling as she reached for his hand, but once again he pulled away. The distance between them was now more than just physical, it was emotional, unbridgeable in that moment. The cast watched in silence, caught between pity and judgment. Some leaned forward, eager to catch every word, while others shifted uncomfortably, unable to watch a love unravel. Then Sierra, who had been sitting quietly, broke the silence. Her voice was sharp, dripping with judgment. She said what many were thinking but hadn't dared to say. That emotional cheating was worse than physical because it meant the heart had strayed. The body might be weak, she said, but when the heart wanders, that's when the real damage is done. Her words sparked murmurs across the room. Some nodded in agreement, others whispered that Sierra was just adding fuel to the fire. Yandy snapped back, her voice cracking with anger. She told Sierra to stay out of her marriage, that she had no right to make things worse. But Sierra didn't back down. She leaned forward and said that by admitting it herself, Yandy had already set the fire, and now everyone was just watching the flames rise. The argument spiraled. Voices overlapped. Castmates took sides, and producers tried to calm the storm but failed miserably. One person shouted that Yandy's honesty should be respected, that most people would have hidden a secret like this forever. Another shot back that honesty doesn't erase betrayal, and some truths are too destructive to forgive. Through the chaos, Mendeecees stayed still, his hands folded tightly, his face carved with pain. Finally, he raised his voice, low but commanding. "Stop, this is between me and my wife." The room fell silent. He turned back to Yandy and asked if she still thought about the other man. The silence that followed was suffocating. Yandy stuttered before whispering that she had moved past it, but the hesitation was long enough to spark doubt, not only in Mendeecees but in everyone listening. Another castmate muttered under their breath, "Hesitation means guilt." That single line broke Yandy. She collapsed into tears, shouting that no matter what she said, no one would believe her. She cried that she was finally being honest, trying to clear the air, not hide in shame anymore, but instead of forgiveness, she was being attacked. Her desperate cries echoed off the walls, and some of her closest friends rushed to her side to comfort her. Fans watching later would call it one of the rawest love and hip-hop moments ever. It wasn't stage drama, it was a woman breaking under the weight of her truth. Online, hashtags exploded, hashtag worse than cheating, and hashtag Yandy ADMITS trended within minutes. As Yandy sobbed, Mendeecees paced back and forth, his hands running over his head. He said he wasn't sure if he could ever trust her again. "Every time I look at you now, I'll wonder who else you leaned on when things got tough. I gave you everything. I fought for us when people said we wouldn't last. And still, you found comfort in somebody else." Yandy begged him to understand it. Wasn't love, it wasn't lust, it was loneliness. She said it was just a temporary escape. But Mendeecees cut her down with a single line. "Being invisible to you is the greatest betrayal of all. Because I've always seen you, even when the world didn't." His raw words shook the room. One friend left, unable to watch. Another whispered that this could be the end of Yandy and Mendeecees as everyone knew them. Even producers, who usually thrived on drama, looked worried. Then, another revelation hit. A close friend admitted they had once seen messages between Yandy and the man she bonded with. The room gasped. Mendeecees' face hardened, his voice trembling as he asked, So you were talking to him? All that time you told me nothing was going on. Yandy defended herself, saying the messages were innocent, just about struggles and life, but few were convinced. Sierra smirked from the corner, whispering that innocent is what people always say when they get caught. The tension grew unbearable. Tears streamed down Yandy's face as she pleaded that she only needed someone to listen when she felt unseen by her husband. But Mendeecees fired back, his voice sharp. Years defending you, standing up for you when the world had something to say, and you were pouring your heart out to another man. His quiet fury was worse than yelling. Yandy tried reaching for him again, but he stepped away. The cast looked on, torn and speechless. One person urged him not to walk away, reminding him that couples survive storms if they fight for love. Another countered that emotional betrayal is poison, it seeps in slowly, but kills completely. Then Sierra struck again, reminding everyone of his own words. This is worse than cheating. She told Yandy coldly, you gave your heart to someone else. How do you come back from that? Her words landed like a final blow. Yandy screamed back that Sierra was obsessed with tearing her down. But her panic only deepened the suspicion. The night spiraled into chaos again. Finally, Yandy fell to her knees in front of her husband, clutching his hands, begging him not to let this mistake erase their years together, their children, their family. For a moment, Mendeecees softened, his eyes wet with unshed tears. He admitted he didn't want to give up, but he didn't know how to move forward with this kind of doubt. Every time you smile at me, I'll wonder if you smiled at him. Every time you say you love me, I'll wonder if you said it to him too. The cast tried to mediate. Some suggested therapy, others time apart, and one bluntly said the marriage might be over. Online, fans battled just as fiercely, half urging forgiveness, half saying it was too far gone. Then another bomb dropped. A castmate admitted they once overheard Yandy on a late-night call. Her voice soft and tender in a way that didn't sound like casual friendship. The revelation sent the room into chaos again. Mendeecees turned pale, his voice shaking as he asked, was that him? Yandy shook her head violently, but her cracked voice only deepened suspicion. Emotions exploded, accusations flew, and the family was left fractured. Friends questioned their loyalty, fans questioned their love. By the end of the night, Yandy clung to her truth that it was never love, never lust, just a mistake born of loneliness. Mendeecees sat broken, torn between the love he still had and the betrayal he couldn't erase. The silence between them was louder than any fight. And everyone watching knew one thing for certain. Their marriage had been forever changed. And now the question is yours. Do you believe Mendeecees is right, that this was worse than cheating? Or does Yandy deserve forgiveness for admitting her truth? Drop